Right, hello. This is part 17 of our game making tutorial. It's been a while. I've been away in San Francisco and at GDC there, and then at Rezzed in London. And I've been showing my own game off to the press and to the public, and that all went really well. And it was quite busy in the lead up to that. It was quite busy when I did it. Been quite busy since I got back, and now I'm still quite busy. And it's really late. And this episode is probably going to be a shortish one because we're actually just going to wrap up what we did last time, which was saving and loading. There's a thing I want to just make what we did make sense. I want to put it to use. And I think if I get it all right, it won't take long to do that. And sometimes when I do like a short thing, I'll move on to a new topic and then do like the start of the next topic in the same episode, which is a stupid idea. I'm going to stop doing that. So this might be a short one. The other side to that is that it's taken about 2 hours of prep for this episode, just trying to get the fucking thing working, because it turns out handling save games or saved data is just awkward and difficult, and there's lots of things to go wrong. So that hopefully won't show through. Hopefully this will be fairly straightforward. So the thing we did last time was I showed you two different ways of saving things. One is you can just tell GameMaker to save the game, and that's fine during a session while you're playing, but if you quit and then come back, that save game is ruined forever. It will never work again. So that's no good for like actually saving like how far through the game are you when you've ever completed. So then I gave you a let's see if we can do it. If I save now, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna get my weapons back in here. Yeah. And then if I load, I don't know, I think I've got 2 copies of Overreckon now. Basically, by pressing up and down, we can save and load our inventory, which is would be useful in a different game. In this game, it's not useful at all, because we only have one level, and so there's no reason I would only need to save my inventory and load it again. Because we're not going to, when you quit the game, we're not going to save your progress through this level. This is just one level, they're pretty short, it's like an arena shooter thing. Saving mid-level progress between playing sessions is difficult, and something I've come to sort of accept since I made Gunpoint is that actually people don't even really expect that. Like, they might like it if it did happen, but most people when they quit a game halfway through a mission and there isn't like a save function, they know they've lost their progress. And I think I'm probably more upset about that than anyone else. I think that's like a thing I dislike in some games, but most people don't care about it as much as I do. And when it's a game like this, that progress is tiny anyway. So in Gunpoint I put in a lot of effort to make sure I did save your mid-level progress if I possibly could, but if the game was patched since you last played, then it broke. And no one cared. I don't know if anyone even noticed. So we are going to keep that thing about saving inventory, but the whole point is, like, the reason you would want to do that in the first place is because we might be progressing through a series of levels. We only have one level at the moment. So the reason it took 2 hours to to get this working in my practice version of this is that I was trying to save it all to one file. I wanted to save your inventory and what level you're on all to one file. And that was stupid. Those are two different things, and they need to be loaded at different times, and they need to be saved over at different times, and so we might as well just do them in 2 separate files. So I'm actually going to change the name of this function to be just save inventory instead of save player data. This is the one we wrote last time. I'm going to change the file name to inventory. It already says inventory here. All of these comments are right, so all of that's pretty good. And yeah, for now I'll just do that. And then load player data is going to be load inventory. Going to change the file name there. I'm going to delete all of these comments because we left those in last time, and these are comments that I wrote about saving a file, so they're all actually incorrect. That's the thing to bear in mind anytime you're copying a big chunk of code and pasting it somewhere else, is if you then go through and change the code, you should also either change the comments or just delete them. In this case, because this is the loading equivalent of the saving function, it seems unnecessary to comment every line because we already know it just does the opposite of the save function. One thing we should have done here though is this says open the file called inventory.txt. Well, what if we've never played and that file doesn't exist? We should check that it does exist. We should say if file exists, beautifully spelt, that If that one exists, then try and load it. And if not, we'll just do nothing, because who cares. So that means now, when, like, anytime we want to load inventory, we can just call this, and if there's an inventory file to load, we'll load it. If there isn't, we won't. And that will fail gracefully, which means nothing will crash. So that's what we want for those. Right now the player controls that himself. Like, it's on the step event of the player. We've got these, by pressing up or down, we load that we trigger those functions, load and save the data. That's madness. That was just for testing purposes. You shouldn't be in control of loading in some items from a file on the hard drive, like, at will. So we're just going to delete all that, because that's not how it's going to work anyway. What I do want to do is we're going to set up save and load functions for inventory. We've done that, and then we're going to do save and load functions for progress. What level are you on? And so we might as well make a new level. Let's do that. So right now it's called R start and R game. I think maybe we'll just call this one R level 1, and that's the level we already made. And now I'm going to right click on it and duplicate, and now we've got R level 2, and that's game development. I don't have time to make this significantly different. I'm just going to, this big room is the kind of distinctive feature, so I'm just going to mess with that enough that that this room will at least look dramatically different. There are two different ways of doing multiple levels in terms of the player. I'm going to start the player over here, and I'm actually going to remove both the weapons from this level, so you can't pick up any weapons at this level. So you need to get them in the first level and carry them across, and that's the crux of the thing, is what part of your progress is persistent across levels, and we want your weapons to be consistent. Once you pick up a weapon in one level, you should take it to the next level. Now it's possible to mark an object as persistent. We did that before, right, with our menu object, I think, is persistent, so it follows us around when we change rooms. The player is not right now. Don't think. No. The player is not persistent. That means every time you leave a room, the player is destroyed, and every time you enter a room that has a player object in it, the player is created. And we're going to stick with that, because it's too difficult to save everything about the player to a file that you then load in later. So if we relied on the player being persistent and we let him accumulate all these variables like inventory count and if he had health or something, then that would be another thing that's attached to him. Then when we save that to disk, we would have to save every single one of those variables individually. And the simpler and cleaner way to do it is to just have the player always start in this kind of virgin, pristine state, and when we load in his inventory, we'll do it the way we already are doing it, where essentially we read in what he had from the file, we spawn each of those items on him, and he automatically picks them up. So we kind of recreate the player state just by spawning items, and that means all the various variables to do with inventory. The inventory is an array, and it's got a counter, and it's got a currently selected index. All that stuff gets set up automatically for us. We don't have to write it down, we don't have to read it in. So that's why I like to do it this way, and that is another thing that contributed to this taking 2 hours to prepare for, because I thought, persistence seems to make sense, because then the player carries across, but no, it's a dark path. Don't go down it unless you really know what you're doing in terms of what properties you want to carry across and how to save them to a file. So now I've got level 1, level 2. We're going to need a way to progress from one to the next. So I'm actually going to do that now. I'm going to just, without doing any saving and loading stuff, I think the only place saving and loading was happening was in the player event, and player step event, and we've got rid of that. So now I'm just going to do, when should we switch levels? It can't be when we kill all the enemies, at least the way I've set up the game, because that's very difficult to do. They spawn really quickly and they're all over the place and there's obstacles in the way, and it's not really a significant achievement to kill all the enemies. All that means is that for the last couple of seconds you were killing faster than they were spawning, and so you could probably do that in the first few seconds if you can do it at all. So I think the one kind of the one type of progress that builds slowly over the course of the game and feels like a natural conclusion is the power meter, right? We build up a bunch of power by killing the green enemies and sucking up their precious greenness and putting that into a bar graph, which then makes our weapon fire more rapidly. And that is handled by this. This bit of code here says, if we're not already at max power, then pick up any power-up that we're touching. Power-ups are just the green lumps that the green things leave behind when you shoot them. And destroy that power-up and increase our power. For some reason it says less than or equals to. I can't remember why I did that, that seems weird. But anyway, we're going to rewrite this, because what we're now interested in is the alternative case, which is, so if our power is less than maximum, we pick something up, but we want to detect, is our power actually greater than or equal to our maximum, and then we'll put all this in the else part of that. So here's the bit where we'll say, go to next level, and if our power is at the maximum or above it, which it shouldn't be, then we're going to go to the next level. If it's not, that means we haven't reached maximum power, therefore it's okay to pick up power. So I'll label that too. Now, go to next level. Do you remember long ago I thought I was going to have to write this ridiculous thing of like room, go to room, no, wait, room next of current room, that garbage? Well, we do have to write something a bit like that. Not quite that. I'm actually just going to look it up because it's, what we want to say is room go to next, which is a nice little function that does that for you. Problem is, if there isn't a next room, the game just crashes. And so on level 1, that's fine because we've got level 2. On level 2, when this runs, when we reach power peak on level 2, the game will just crash. So we have to check if it exists, and there is a logical way of doing that, and it doesn't work. So we're going to just copy and paste what I middle click there on room go to next to look up its entry in the documentation. And as it happens, the example they give of how to use that, they show you how to do an existence check for the room that you're going to go to, i.e. before you go to the room, check that there is a room. And we're going to copy and paste it, because it's fucking nonsense. If room exists, room next of the room, then go to the next room. I was going to do, well, I'm not going to go into that. There's a way to do it that's marginally less complicated than that, and it for some reason just, it literally says, you can't use that variable. So that is our next room code, and that's when we hit power maximum, we will go to the next room. And so before we put in all this progress saving stuff, we should just check that we can progress to a new level. And I'll leave the code as only progress when we hit the maximum power, but because that takes a while, I'm going to temporarily change the maximum power to be like 10. We start at 5, so if we just pick up a few things, this should get us to the next level, hopefully. Nope, crash. Oh, okay. So our start game button is taking us... I'm sure I did this correctly, and I'm sure I specifically gloated about doing it correctly. But when we click our menu button to go to start the game, it is actually trying to load our game. Oh, it's all on the draw GUI event, isn't it? So yeah, we've got this nice button press thing. And for some reason we do room go to our game. Maybe I explained in great detail why that was a good idea, but we're just going to do room go to next, that function I was just talking about, and previously I said we need to do an existence check on that. Here we don't, because this is the main menu. We're saying new game. Oh no, I see why I did this, because if you brought up the menu on the middle of a level, you don't, when you click new game, you want to go back to the start, right? Maybe we'll just update what the name of the level is. Because in theory, the nice thing about using room go to next is if we change the name of the room, it doesn't affect it. But in this case, we actually do want to reference this specific level. Level 1 is special. It's the level you go to when you start a new game. So we're just going to fix that. Excuse me. Some strong water. Right. Hey! Our game works. Why? Oh, right. It looks like we've got loads of power, but we haven't. We've only got the usual 5. but the maximum is 10, so it's half. Let's kill some things. Pick up some power. Oh shit, I lost all my power. No, this is going well. I'm really tired. Let's shoot some things, come on. Is that enough? No. Oh god! Jesus Christ, I hate this game. These can come out of nowhere. Hey, we went to the next level. We went to the next level, it didn't crash. Player spawned in the correct location, which we moved in specifically to check that would work. And I've lost my weapons, which that's the only part of this we don't like. We would like my weapons to carry across. So let's do that next. God, this is so much easier when you break it into two separate things. If you try and think of inventory and progress as being the same kind of data, this is a mess. It's really difficult. So, the question to ask is, when do we want to save the inventory and when do we want to load it? And I would say that we want to save your inventory when you leave a level and load it when you enter a level. Because whatever you have when you finish one level is what you want to carry across to the next one. And we're not going to sort of manually insert something into level 2 that loads and level 1 that saves, because level 1 and 2 aren't special in that way. We want every level to behave the same way. Every time you leave a level, we save what you had then. Every time you enter a level, we give you that back. So we do have we'll do entering level first. We have this initialize room script. So if we went into initialize room, and at the bottom of it we said when you enter a room we want to load player. What's going to overdo it? Oh sorry, it's just called load inventory, isn't it? There's a big red mark there, that's a breakpoint. That's there because GameMaker is deeply, deeply weird. That was something when I was testing this, in a completely different version of this project. I set a breakpoint at that line, and it's carried across, even after disabling it, even into a different project. Breakpoints are really weird. I'm not going to tell you about them because they're what you use within the debugger, and the debugger is difficult to use, and when I'm doing heat signature and stuff, I have my own custom debug sort of console thing that I scripted, which at some point I will try and prepare for public consumption and release it, because it's a really useful thing if you don't already have an equivalent. So every time we initialize a room, we're going to load the inventory, and remember we wrote this function in a nice way so that if the file doesn't exist, it won't do it. Actually, the other thing that we should think about is that we're running a script from the initialize room script, which runs on the room itself. And right here we say, this is all fine, and then we get to weapon type equals this, and then we create something at the X and the Y value of the room. That doesn't make a lot of sense. We actually want to spawn it at the player, and we don't even want to do this if the player doesn't exist. So as well as checking whether the file exists, we should check whether instance exists or player, and then if he does, then every time we refer to something like XY, we mean the player's XY. So we could, I'm just going to say with OPlayer. That is a, we've done that before, haven't we, where you say with, and then everything within those square brackets, everything between those purpley bits, will be executed as if the player is executing it, which means when we say X, we mean the player's X, and when we say Y, we mean the player's Y. Something I discovered in my 2 hours of hellish preparation for this is that if you do refer to the X and Y of a room, it doesn't crash. GameMaker doesn't have any problem with that, it just doesn't work. I think it must be, they're probably 0 and 0 maybe, and so I guess it spawns them at 0 and 0, but you don't see it. So that was a difficult one to figure out. And we're going to do this with the saving as well, right? Because let's just get out of all this. Everything's maximized now for some reason. Actually, I'm just going to check. Is it recording? Yes. Saving. Yeah, we don't want to save the player's inventory unless he exists, and I should say if instance is player, then with the player, save all this stuff. and that means that now, because we check for the player's existence and then we run this code on him, it means that we don't have to think about where we run save inventory. Save inventory can be run wherever we like, and in fact we're going to run it when we leave a room. It probably will be the player that calls it, maybe not. Yeah, it's going to be in here. So before we go to the next room, this is the bit where we go to the next level. Remember we said we want to save inventory when we leave a level and load it when we enter a level. We're going to say save inventory. And that should be it, right? The thing I'm curious about is it going to, when we go to the menu room, which doesn't have a player in it, and there's no inventory to save, is it going to gracefully fail? It should do. Yep, good so far. And then we get into the level. We shoot some stuff. Surprisingly difficult to actually get some power-ups in this. It's a good challenging game. That's not good. And hey, we're on the next level and we've got all our inventory. God, that worked flawlessly. And with no preparation at all. Oh, and even also just accidentally demonstrated that we gracefully fail when there's no extra level to go to. You know, we're on level 2 now. I've got to power max, and it's not crashing or taking me to a new level. It knows there's no new level to go to, so that's where the game ends. So that's great, we've done the inventory part. Now I want to save what level we're on. If we're on level 2 and we crit, when we come back, I want to be on level 2. I don't want to be on level 0, which is the menu. So let's copy this. And this is going to be a separate thing. Save progress. And instead of inventory.txt, it'll be going to be progress.txt. I think it's fair game to say that we only want to save progress if the player exists. Doesn't really matter that we do it with the player, but no harm in that. And now, instead of inventory, remember this first line that we write is not anything we actually use data-wise, it's for labelling the file itself. If I open up the folder that we're running it in, we go to the inventory file that we've just been using. It says inventory at the top, and then these are the numbers of the guns that you had. The word inventory is not read in, we ignore it when we're reading it in. It's just so that if someone opens the file, they know what the file represents. And that's not super important, but if they see that it says progress, they might know that they shouldn't delete it. So we're going to call this one room, because then the next thing we're going to write after that new line, instead of all this was a list of our weapons, I'm going to delete that. We're going to write a line that records to the save file string of room. Room is a special word that, if we look it up, is the room index for the current room that the game is running. That's what we want. When we save our progress, we want to save which room we're in. And the word string means turn this into a word. If we just try and save the word room, for some reason it doesn't come out properly. Room is a number. Even though we've named our rooms things like R level 1 and R level 2, if I write the word R level 1 or 2, whichever I happen to type, GameMaker actually interprets that as a number, and it will be something like 3 or 4. And same for the word room. If we're in level 2 and we say the word room, it's going to be something like 3 or 4. And so string just says record it as a piece of text. I think that's necessary. One of the times it went wrong, I didn't have the word string there, and then I put the word string in there, and then it worked. So hopefully that was it. It's a function worth knowing about anyway. So is that it? I think just to be safe, we'll write an extra line on the end. That right line means kind of press enter, new line. And that's another thing that might not be necessary, but it did once go wrong when I didn't have that, so let's put it in. The reading in files is not an exact science in my mind. It's kind of like keep adding right lines until it works. But that's all we need. We're just going to record the name of the room, and then when we load progress, which I will, as a function I will make now, by duplicating our load inventory script, load progress, then we want to take that word progress. Remember, it's progress.txt we care about. We're not going to check that the player exists this time, because to load our progress, we might want to do that from the main menu. In fact, that's probably the only place we'll do it, is on the main menu. Once the game starts, let's load in where we were. And so the player doesn't exist at that point, so we're certainly not going to ensure he exists. Open the file called progress.txt. We've already checked that it exists. Let's unindent a bunch of that. Then read in, this line is where it actually says room. We don't care about that line. What we want is, when we say this next, I'm going to delete all that, that's the inventory stuff. When we say file text read real, that means read the next line and interpret it as a real number. That's what real means. By itself, that means nothing. That's not even a proper line of code. We want to save that as a variable. So I'm actually going to say var. I'm just going to do room to go to equals that. And then, so we're reading in that number. Remember, it's a number that we saved as a string, but when we read it in, we're telling it to interpret it as a number. Basically, text files, the things we're saving to, work in words, and GameMaker wants numbers most of the time. So when we say we convert it to a word, and then we read it in, we convert it back to a number. And I want to store that in a variable because I want to check if room exists. Room to go to. Nope, not what I pasted. Room to go to. Then, guess what? Room go to. Room to go to. This is becoming almost a weird song. Room exists, room to go to, room go to, room to go to. I think that makes perfect sense. Weirdly, to me it does. Like, it sounds ridiculous, but that all of those words say what they mean. And if it doesn't, then nothing will happen at all. Hopefully it will. We shouldn't, if the file exists, we hope that it has the right data in it, but if it doesn't, this won't crash, it'll just not go anywhere. Which is the best case scenario. You know, if your save file got corrupted, you wouldn't want the game to always crash every time you fire it up. You would want the game just to show the new game options, which is what it'll do in this case. I'm trying to figure out if I've done anything wrong. I don't think so. So like I say, load progress is actually a thing we'll probably call only from the start of the game. And if you want to be traditional about it, you can add a load game menu option to the menu using what we already know. But I personally think that the way Gunpoint works is you're in the middle of a mission and it's got a save game that it can load, or if you're not and it's got a progress file that records, has a record of how far through the game you are, when you fire out the game it automatically loads that, because of course you want to carry on where you left off. If you don't, you can go to the menu and start a new game, that's always an option. But 99% of the times you fire up a game and you have a save file, you will want to load the save file, of course you will. But every other game that shows a main menu and then you have to manually say I want to load, and I want to load the latest save game. Yes, I want to do the obvious fucking thing! So we're going to do it automatically in this. Now this initialize room thing is actually where we want to save progress. So every time a room starts, if the player exists, then we want to save progress. So it looks a bit weird because we're going to load progress and then save progress. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But two things. I think actually when we load progress, if the progress file exists and we go to a room, then we probably don't execute the rest of this. But even if we do, it doesn't matter, because when we write load inventory, remember, won't work unless the player exists, and save progress also won't work if the player doesn't exist. So on this main menu thing, neither of those functions are going to do anything. If we go into save progress, the first thing it says is, does the instance exist player, and the player doesn't exist, so it won't do it. But on every other level, this will run after the player is created in the level, and so we will load his inventory and then save his progress. We will load in what weapons he has that we carry over from previous levels, and we will record the fact that I have got to this level. This is the latest level I've got to, please record it. Right now we don't have any way to go back and play previous levels, and if we did, we'd have to be careful about saving the progress automatically, because we would save the progress as being level 1, even if you're actually on level 10 and you're just replaying level 1. That's the kind of fun thing I had to deal with for Gunpoint's mission replay stuff. But that's way beyond our scope right now. We're keeping it very simple. So I think that's all we need. When the menu room starts up, we try and load progress if there is any. If there isn't any, we'll go on to initialize room and yada yada. If there is one, it will take us to the room. The room, remember, has the player in it. So the room actually creates the player, and also loads in all of the weapons that he might have. And maybe this will work. I'm talking to myself mostly when I'm saying this stuff, because I'm trying to make sure that I've remembered all the different moving parts of this. It seems too simple, but that might just be because I was trying it the hard way before. Okay, so this is what we expected, nothing happened. Now we go to level 1, and if I quit now, let's actually have a snoop around and see if it created a file called progress.txt, and in it just says room and the number 1. Like I said, rooms are just numbers like that. So now when I start it up, what we'd like to see is just it to spawn me in that room. The start of that room, start of that level. Will it work? Yes, it will work. And I forgot one thing, which is that the menu is persistent. Remember, that menu is actually on all levels. And the menu is actually on the first level, the menu level, and when we load a game, all we're doing is changing rooms, and the menu is persistent, so it carries across when we change rooms, so we still have the menu in our face. And that's fine, we actually do want the menu, because we still want to be able to quit and stuff, but we should just say, when you load progress, we'll put it in the load progress function actually, because every time we load progress we want to do this. If we've loaded something, then we'll say omenu.mode equals game. So our menu has two modes, there's menu mode and game mode. When you're in game mode, the menu hides itself, so it's not over the action. And that's how you say that. So hopefully this will work, and then we'll be done. So the thing I'll test is I'll go to level 2 and see if my weapons get carried across, see if when I fire it up again we go to level 2, and then thirdly see if when we load it up again and it goes to level 2 that I have my weapons. It's easy to get distracted in this game and start shooting things just for the fun of it. Hey, I completed that level. It's rather abrupt, there's no effect for that. I thought it was going to be a short episode, it's not at all, is it? It is, even once you know what you're doing, this stuff is just complicated. There's a lot to it. There's a lot that has to be right. Okay, I was trying to collect enough stuff and then I remembered actually you can't complete this level because it's the last level. So now I'm going to quit. And what I hope, my weapons got carried across to that level like before, which is nice. Now when I start it up again, we'd like to see it be on level 2, be at the start of level 2, but have all my weapons. That would be the big win. And we do! Fucking fantastic. Alright, we've got a game with 2 levels, and your progress is saved automatically, and your weapons are carried across to the next level, and nothing else is, which is a good thing because it keeps stuff a lot simpler. So that's it for this time. Thanks for watching.